for the first time ever, I am canceling a credit card. We're going to talk about why lots of people think they should cancel credit cards, but also why most of the time that's really not a good idea. And ultimately, we're going to figure out why I'm canceling my American Express Hilton Honors business card. So let's get started. The most common thing I hear when it comes to canceling credit cards is people telling me that they are going to cancel a credit card or that they have canceled a credit card because they just don't use it. So I don't want to have any extra credit card accounts. I heard it's bad to have too many credit card accounts. I heard it's bad to have credit card accounts open that you don't use. So I closed it, but I cannot express to you how much this frustrates me to hear, because although they think they're doing the best thing for their financial future and for their credit, and obviously I'm not a financial advisor, just giving you advice from someone passionate in the industry, but I cannot tell you how much I wish I could have just told them this before they canceled those cards and hurt themselves and maybe got themselves a worse rate for a mortgage or prevented themselves from getting future cards because they unknowingly hurt their credit by canceling those cards. That being said, there are times when you should cancel cards, and maybe you should cancel cards that you are actively using. It might not just be when you're not actively using it. But to really figure out when you should cancel a card, there are two levers that you have to look at. Lever number one is whether or not the card is bringing you positive value each and every year. And so what I mean by that is cards with no annual fee give you positive value every year, as long as you use it occasionally for a purchase in a category that it gives you a higher than expected multiplier back for, because you're not paying anything for it and it's giving you value back. Or if it comes with any perks that you find valuable, because you're not paying an annual fee to it, anything in that card that's valuable, that's going to be worth it for you every single year. The question becomes a little more complicated when you're talking about cards that have an annual fee. Because if a card has an annual fee, then you have to make sure that the perks for that card every year outweigh the annual fee that you're paying to keep that card. And if you're paying more for that card than it's bringing you back in value every year, that's not a positive expected value for you. And so it's costing you money. And credit cards should never cost you money. They should always be earning you money. And so if that's happening, right, that's when you should consider canceling a card. That being said, the other lever here to look at is your credit and your credit score and the impact that canceling a card will have on your credit score. So you have how much is this card earning you or costing you every year? And then you have the question of how much will canceling this card impact my credit score? And if so, will it be a positive or a negative change? To start with whether or not a card has a positive or negative expected value for you, that's very simple to figure out. If a card has no annual fee, meaning if it costs you nothing to keep every year, it can't possibly have a negative expected value for you. So this question only matters when you have an annual fee, and then it's very simple. You take the annual fee, you subtract any credits that the card gives you that actually give you value. So for example, with the Chase Sapphire Preferred, there's a $95 annual fee, and that $95 annual fee can be offset by $50 by using its $50 a year hotel credit. So if that credit is valuable to you, you can subtract the $50, and then you're left with $45 in net effective annual fee. Now the question is, do the other benefits of this card make it worth that $45 a year? So in my case, for example, I also have a Chase Freedom Flex card, which gives me 5% back on rotating categories, and I also have a Chase Freedom Student card that I got a while back, and that's earning me 20,000 points a year. But because I have those other cards, the Chase Sapphire Preferred card actually lets me transfer all of my other Chase points to my Sapphire Preferred card, where they get 25% more value. And so that to me is worth the $45 a year. That being said, that $45 a year might not be worth it for you if you don't have many other Chase cards, and especially if you aren't taking advantage of that $50 a year hotel credit. So for any card that's out there, you really have to understand whether or not that card is earning you or costing you money every year. Now let's go look at the impact canceling a card has on your credit, because this is an area where lots of people get confused. I cannot tell you how many times I've had people tell me that they thought it was bad for their credit to have too many cards open, so they canceled cards they weren't using. That's actually not true. It turns out one of the things that impacts your credit is how many accounts you have open at a given time, but it's actually good to have more accounts open at a given time. The reason being is if the banks see that you can actually manage all of these different lines of credit, even if you don't use them, that shows that they can reliably lend you credit and you're not going to go max out all of your cards. And if that sounds weird to you, it is a little bit, but you have to realize that they give credit to the people who they think need it least. So it's okay if you don't use your cards that often. People say that you should use a card once every 12 months, maybe for a $2.90 subway ride, just that you remind the bank you're alive, but really that's not so necessary for every card. You could do that if you want to be safe and don't want to have them close it for you. But when it comes to the impact on your credit, having credit that you don't use is actually one of the best things you could do. And the other benefit it has is that one of the other good things that counts toward your credit is your average age of account. And if you have lots of accounts that are aging, meaning you just have them open for a long time, they help bring up your average age of account. So this is why when you get a new card, actually, it hurts your credit right away because it brings down your average age of account. And it also gives you a hard inquiry, but that's a lesser effect. But then as you wait over the years, having more and more credit cards is actually better for your credit because it ages your account and brings up the average age of your account, which shows that you're a more reliable credit card user. And the last reason keeping lots of cards open that you don't actually use can really be helpful for your credit, and this is another big misconception people have, is that when you have lots of accounts that you don't use, it actually helps your credit utilization score. Why is that? Because your credit utilization is your outstanding balance across all of your credit accounts divided by your credit limit across all of your credit accounts. And so if you have a bunch of credit cards that you aren't putting any spend on, all that's doing is adding to that denominator. It's adding to the amount of total credit available to you so that your credit utilization is a lower percentage, and that increases your credit score. So if we think of the downsides now of canceling a credit card, it actually becomes quite obvious. Canceling a credit card can increase your credit utilization. It can also drop your score because the average age of your accounts goes down if you've had this card for longer than you've had your average credit card. And it can also reduce the total number of credit accounts you have, which also hurts your credit score if that number is too low. And so canceling a credit card, more often than not, actually hurts your credit score, even if it's a card you don't use. So that brings us to the question, when should you actually cancel your credit card? And the answer is if it's a no annual fee credit card, never cancel it. Even if someone steals it, for example, and you think you're canceling it to prevent fraud, just call up your credit card company and tell them, I think someone stole my card. They'll issue a new one with a new number on the same account so it doesn't hurt your credit score. You do not want to cancel any credit cards that have no annual fee, even if you don't use them, because those are helping keep your credit score high. And this is also why at Pointwise, I'll leave a link for that down in the description below. That's my day job where we built an algorithm that helps people get the absolute best card for them, regardless of their preferences, by analyzing their spending. And we kind of guide you on your credit card journey over time to help you figure out which credit cards to get and when. So I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. We're about to launch it, so please sign up. But that's why at Pointwise, what we recommend to people is their first few credit cards should be low annual fee or no annual fee cards, because those are much more likely to be what are called keeper cards, which are cards that you're able to keep forever, even if you don't put any spend on it. Because again, you want those cards to start aging to build up your average age of accounts and your total number of accounts to keep your credit score high. And now the only thing we really have left to discuss is when should you cancel a card? And that is when you have a card that earns you a negative value each year. If you have a card that costs you more money than it's earning you every year to keep, that's when you should cancel a card. You probably won't be getting cards that aren't worth it for you every year unless there's a really attractive sign-up bonus, or if you're just chasing after sign-up bonuses. And that means that you're going to have cards which have higher annual fees than the card is worth in value if you're not getting the sign-up bonus every year. But even before you cancel those cards, I would say you should reach out to your credit card issuer, tell them you're thinking about canceling the card, and oftentimes they'll be able to give you what's called a retention offer, which is where they'll give you basically a miniature sign-up bonus even though you've had the card for however many years, just to prevent you from closing the card. Amex is really well known for doing this. And so the only reason you should cancel a card is if it costs you more money in annual fees than it brings you in value every year, and you've reached out to the credit card company and they haven't given you a retention offer. And so that leads us to why I'm canceling a card for the first time in my credit card career, I guess you could say, which is that I have the Hilton Honors American Express Business Credit Card. But the problem with this credit card is American Express actually just revamped it. In my opinion, they made it worse. But what they did is it used to have a much lower annual fee. They raised it to a $195 a year annual fee and replaced a free night credit that was available on the card if you hit a certain minimum spend every year. They replaced that with 4 individual $60 Hilton credits that can be used each month. And now I don't travel to hotels, especially not to Hilton hotels, once a quarter. So this now wasn't valuable for me every year. And because they raised the annual fee, I'm not going to keep paying a high annual fee when I can't use those benefits just to be able to keep my credit score a couple points higher. And so I understand maybe my credit score will drop a couple points because I'm bringing down my total number of accounts. I'm going to bring up my utilization a little bit. I'm going to bring down my average age of accounts by a little bit, but it won't be significant enough because I have plenty of other cards. And so it's just not worth paying that $195 a year annual fee for that marginal improvement in credit score. If you have any specific questions about your situation and whether or not you should cancel a card that wasn't answered in this video, please leave it down in the comments below and I'll get back to everyone. And if you're wondering which credit cards to get instead of which credit cards to cancel, check out getpointwise.com down in the description below. And in just a few weeks, we'll be able to guide you on your credit card journey, and that will be totally free.